Have you ever had your life turn upside down, not because of a crisis, but because of a renovation? Since December 1st, my kitchen and laundry room have been completely gutted. No oven, no sink, no dishwasher, just a crock pot, a toaster oven, a microwave, a camping stove, and a whole lot of paper plates. And living in Western New York in December with snow, a dog, and a husband in tight corners. Today at Come to the Well, I want to talk about what happens when God allows the gutting, not just of our homes, but our routines, expectations, and control, and how we can turn seasons of chaos into places of grace. Welcome to Come to the Well. I am your host, Colleen, and I am excited to share with you a story of renovation and grace. You are most welcome here, so grab a cup of coffee, a cup of tea, and come to the well. You know, my construction began December 1st, and we're already weeks in. The reason it started December 1st was because the construction workers were able to get work, and we also needed to order cabinets. So the cabinet price was going to go up December the 15th. So we really thought, well, if we want to maximize our time, then why not get started in December? It would have been nice to start after the Christmas season, but it just worked out and said it might not be the best timing, but if we're going to do this, we will get it done in December. So right after Thanksgiving, we had to kind of pivot and shift and move everything out of our kitchen area to Although it was not convenient, we felt that we would be able to make it work. We thought that maybe we could move back to Cleveland and stay with one of our children. We had to remember we had to take the dog, which was a problem because my one daughter's house is not conducive to the space of a dog and two grown adults and their two young children. My son had just asked his girlfriend to move in, and what I thought might work out was just a situation that wouldn't work. Yes, I was disappointed, but God had a plan, and He said, you know what? It's time for you to stop. When looking at it, God's plan was for my husband and I to work together on a beautiful vision of a new kitchen and a laundry room and work together on the next phase of our life. When I realized that that was the true plan, I became a little bit more accepting that it wasn't feasible for me to live or stay with my son or daughter, and I would make the best out of the situation. I learned to create easy meals through using the crock pot. My husband was here for the first week by himself, and he did a lot of banquet meals. Well, coming from the health space and losing 55 pounds, there was no way I was going to do lean cuisine or meals like that when I have the gift of being a creative cook. In dietetics, I learned quantity foods, and as a young woman with a mother and a grandma of Polish descent, I learned how to do a little bit of creative cooking. So I used my crock pot. I did some microwave mealing, and I used the toaster oven to make salmon. You can take frozen salmon, defrost it, put it in the toaster oven on bake at 400 with some great Old Bay seasoning and let it cook. You can use the crock pot to make your rice, and your vegetable you could steam. I became quite creative. I wasn't sure if you could actually cook spaghetti in the crock pot, but I actually was able to take my ground beef, cook it on high in my crock pot, let it cook for a little while, mash it up. Once the ground beef was cooked, which took a little longer than the normal cooking methods on top of the stove or in a fry pan, probably about an hour and a half on high, added the spaghetti sauce, made sure there was enough sauce where I could take the noodles, break them up, and put them on top. The liquid got hot enough to cook the noodles and the sauce all together. It was kind of like Chef Boyardee. I didn't know if it would work, but it did. You hear stories where people make lasagna and all sorts of things in the crock pot, but I never trusted that the ground beef would be cooked enough, but it was. Certain things like pork, center cut pork roast takes a little bit more time, but you do have to think a little bit on your creative cooking. So I do have to think about what am I going to cook for supper, usually around lunchtime, because the crock pot is, I have to remember it's a slow cooker, so it does take slow time. So if you want to eat by 6 or 6:30, you can't put anything in the crock pot at 4 o'clock. If that happens, then you're going to have to call for dinner service or you're going to have to go out to eat. Washing dishes is a little bit of a challenge. We wash it in our bathroom sink. I have a small little bowl that I can clean my plastic silverware. I can clean out the crock pot and I can clean up some coffee cups. I really don't like using paper coffee cups. I can clean my paper dishes and I can also clean the silverware. So it becomes a little bit challenging, but it's working so far. I use the toilet seat, put it down, and put my towel on that as a dish rack. It's working so far, and I have a nice little area where I have kind of a, what would you call it? A cabinet that I can put the paper towels or the towel, and it could be a draining rack as well as I can use it to soak my dishes in my small little pot. So all in all, it's working pretty well. Using the bottled water, I've chosen to get better quality of water. We do have well water, so I got a bigger gallon jug instead of the small little bottles because we seem to go through that very quickly. The snow in Western New York is a bit of a challenge between rain and then snow and not getting used to the wind off the lake. And it's very rural, so you don't have houses to block some of that snow like we did in Cleveland. So it's getting used to driving 20 minutes to the closest town to get groceries. You need to make sure you have an all-wheel drive vehicle, or at least my vehicle's in all-wheel drive, and you just go a little bit slower. So you just have to learn to manage the snow. You have to learn to manage getting out and shoveling or snow blowing. So my husband has to get up a little earlier so he can snow blow the driveway, move cars to the neighbor's house, which we snow blow their driveway because they live in Canton, Ohio. And I did ask them if we can park our vehicles there while the workers actually are parking in our area. So we're getting up earlier because they come pounding on your beams at 7 a.m. So you can't really sleep much past 7 if you want to have some sanity. So I'm up doing some meditation, some prayer time, and doing some reading, and I'm ready to go. So that means I'm going to bed a little bit earlier most of the time. So my husband's snow blowing not only the driveway, but a path into the front of the house because we have no back entryway. Now, remember, that's where the construction is. So we have to come through the front, up the steps. We have a porch, but we have a porch covered so it doesn't ruin the porch, which we do have a lot of we have our kitchen table in there. We have our chairs. We have a table out there where I put my fry pan, my camping stove. I can put my mixer out there. So I have things out there as a makeshift outdoor kitchen when it's not really, really as cold. So we're able to unzip that and to be able to go out. But we have to remember we have to shovel the stoop if it gets icy so we don't fall down. So we have to have our boots and our coats, and we have to make sure that we have an area rug and a place to put our boots so we're not ruining the wood floor. And the dog is in a tight space. I have to make sure that he stays so he's not running out because when you have a German Shepherd, he wants to go out and have fun and have some playtime. So you have to make sure that the covers zip so he's not bolting through there. So there is a few challenges when you're getting up, going for a walk and getting the snow blown it's very challenging. And the emotion weighs high living on top of one another in closed space. But we seem to be making it work. It's not the big things that get you, it's the thousand tiny inconveniences that pile up and wear on your spirits. Connecting emotionally is really important to talking to your husband. And when you have been working for so long and you've been kind of living your life working and he working, and now you're both retired and you're together, it's noticing habits and behaviors that aren't always the easiest, but you recognize things that God gives you those little signs that it's going to be okay. The small space does amplify emotions, but it causes us to communicate a little bit better. There is some disruptions, there is some irritation, there is some exhaustion, there is some short temper or frustration being on top of one another. The dog tends to want to be outside a lot and he moans and whines and he cries a little bit because he wants to be outside 24/7. The reality is he can't be outside because it's cold. So he has to be inside and he wants to play with the ball. Now remember, he's a shepherd. So you do feel a little out of control sometimes. The grief of missing seasonal traditions like baking cookies, hosting Christmas parties, inviting people over, creating a warm, beautiful winter environment, designing in your area of being fresh and new, especially when you just move into this space since May. I really wanted it to be kind of warm and happy, but it's just not going to be that way this year. I know I really noticed how quickly I went from I can handle this to why does this feel so heavy? And that's when I realized this wasn't about a kitchen, it was more about being in control. Now, ladies, how often do you want to control every situation? And when things aren't in your control, you just feel at a loss. And that's when trust has to come in. That's when I have to trust that the plan that God has for me in this season, in this 3 months, is better than I can control. So I have to let that down. And I have to remind my husband that too. Sometimes he gets frustrated that he can't do projects because someone has to be here, with the dog, because the dog gets anxious hearing the pounding and the sawing and knowing there's people on the other side of the barricaded door and he wants to play. So we really have to be open and cognizant of when people want to go work out, go to the store, or just get away for a little bit of time, as well as spend quality time together. So you do notice those little weird behaviors that people have when you're around them 24/7. Like my husband loves to listen to this radio program and it goes on and on and on, and it can be very annoying, but he's like, "I gotta keep up with the news." And I'm one that I like some news, but I really like more of a quiet atmosphere. So you're really looking at I can't control what he does, but I can mention to him, but let that roll off and ask God for some help with that. So I need to shift from frustration to transformation because I really have to realize that the home is going to be transformed into a lovely environment. All the homes that my husband and I have owned, he's done the work on top of working, working two jobs, and sometimes things wouldn't get done. Sometimes we'd have Christmas holidays where there would be still work to be done, some painting to be done, a bathroom not fixed, or he'd be up late at night before the holidays getting it done. But this time we decided to contract this project out. And even though it might be a little bit more in our budget, he's not doing the work because he's getting older and he doesn't need the work, even though he would love to do part of that work. But it's just not his season right now. He has to learn to put down the hammer and then he'll be able to do some work on some small bathroom projects or other projects like painting our bedroom. But just right now, with other contract people in our home, you really can't take the sawhorses outside because he has his tools down the basement and do the things that he really would like to do because he has the time. So we're all learning to manage our frustration and learn that it's a time to transform ourselves. I have to share a story with you. I'm not able to bake cookies. So I walk with my neighbors, and my neighbor said, anytime you want to come over and bake, my kitchen's open. She's like, I'm actually baking this week. I'd love for you to come over. I have some supplies. What recipes would you like to make? And I was like, I'd love to make some thumbprint cookies and something else. So we got a day together. We decided to bake some cookies. The cookies that I did pick, of course, had to chill for either an hour or two or a night. So we had to make some shifting and put the baking on hold to get it done all in one day and postpone it to get it done in 2 days. And looking at her schedule, because she was being kind enough to let me use her oven. So sometimes you have to be flexible for someone else's time frame and their personal needs. You have to be humble and holy and ask people, would it be okay if I bake some cookies at your house? And usually they say yes, but sometimes it's really hard to ask. But it's so nice to be able to have home baked cookies instead of relying on the bakery. Not that the bakery cookies aren't good. It's just you have this expectation of cookies that your grandma made or traditions of making cookies with your mother in law that this time of year you want to still be able to do. Asking to use someone else's oven reminds me of how hard it is for women to receive. We're so used to being the ones who host, provide, and make things beautiful. So this is a deeper lesson that I'm learning to let go and let others serve me. Letting go of my pride, trusting that God will provide through other people. And that's not easy for many of us. I'm sure a lot of you women can relate. A gutted kitchen looks worse before it looks better. Sometimes things look worse in our situation before things get better. Sometimes things happen and you think of the situation like I'm never going to be able to see that person, and I always think the worst, but really things are coming together. Walls are open, dust is everywhere, things can't function properly, but gutting is necessary for new wiring, stronger foundation, and better flow. Sometimes God allows the gutting not to punish us, but to prepare us. He removes what no longer works so he can rebuild something more beautiful than before. And that's the lesson that I'm learning. As the workers are there gutting the kitchen, pulling the drywall down, taking the appliances, which are in my dining room right now, it's a test. It's a test for me to be transformed. And sometimes, ladies, we have to be gutted. We have to be rewired. We have to change our foundation so we can become a new creation. And sometimes these are lessons that are hard to learn, especially in any season, but especially as we get older, because we really want things to be a certain way because it's learned behavior. As you get older, you expect that you shouldn't be doing this that way. You should be able to have nice things. And why is everything in my life a mess at my age? But it's just a way of God to prepare us. Sometimes, ladies, our lives are on a health journey. And that might be where you're at, where you're finding that this is a season where you're diagnosed with something or you're struggling with some aches and pains. Maybe your marriage is not working the way you want to in this season, and God's telling you to be patient or to sit or trust Him and trust in His plan for you in your marriage. Because in marriage, God brought you that particular spouse and he has a plan. And sometimes, ladies, as hard as it is, We have to pray really hard and lock arms with our spiritual sisters and sit and ask God and say to Him, He is your son, and I can't do anything about it right now. And I need you to look after him because I've done everything I can. You know, ladies, some of us are empty nesters where our kids have graduated, moved on, are in different states, are married, and have their own kids. And that can be a difficult place to be, trusting that you laid some ground foundation and some family values with them. There's also midlife transitions, like I'm in right now. The transition where my husband's retired and he's really not working right now. He's decided to take some time with this remodel and really rethink and slow his life down. That doesn't mean that he won't pick up anything. He may pick up, and just because, I realize that men over 58, when it comes to retirement, they get very nervous, and that's where their identity is. So, ladies, don't be afraid when your husband wants to get a little side hustle because it helps you stay sane. Because when they're doing other things, then you could be growing and nurturing yourself and doing things that you enjoy doing. Because not all the time can partners be doing everything 24/7. And I learned this along the way when my father died. He died 6 years before my mom died, and they did everything together. He pumped her gas, he did the banking, and she was lost for a period of time. They had a great relationship. She had some female friends, but not a lot. They had a lot of couples friends. But as we all know, we have couples that either have lost a spouse or divorced. And it's like a grief process when you get together with couples and they divorce because you like both of them. But one gets jealous that you want to invite the other person, or you're talking to the husband or the wife, or your husband's talking to one or the other, and they get really mad, and you can lose that relationship very easy. So I've learned along the way that you need to cultivate some good female relationships. And that's another reason why I am bringing you ladies to the well, to become vulnerable, find a community of like minded Christian women who you can talk to, who you can reach out to, who you can call your sister in Christ and call upon in a difficult situation. Because we are stronger women together than alone. And I can tell you that for a fact. The season has no expiration date. 3 months isn't forever. And it might be less than 3 months. They just said it could be potentially 3 months. So these first month, we're learning, we're transforming, we're making some new patterns, and we're learning through the difficult times to be creative. Creativity grows in limitations. Simple meals, simple expectations. And isn't that what we all want, ladies? We learn a lot of graces with the simplicity of life. Glory comes after the mess. And I know I'll be laughing after this mess is all over. The mess of the dining room with the tablecloth. I finally got a plastic tablecloth and the paper products all over, and my husband's computer in one spot, and he has papers everywhere, and I keep moving them and I don't know where to move them. But I will laugh, and grace comes in those moments where you try to find that true happiness, and you try to find that, even though I'm moving things around, there is some order in the disorder. When the kitchen and the laundry room is finished, it's going to be so well worth the wait. The time that we have with each other to plan the countertops and the lighting, and to see it slowly come to fruition, our dream of having a gorgeous kitchen and something that we actually have designed together will really be a blessing. As much and as hard as it is, it'll be worth the wait when it's all done. The chaos doesn't have to cancel the calling. The disruption doesn't mean God isn't present. And isn't that the truth? God is present in every moment I just have to recognize those God winks. Where in your life does it feel like things are being torn apart instead of coming together? And what if this is God making room for something new? If this episode resonated with you, if you're living in a season of disruption, stress, or waiting, I invite you to come to the well with me next week. Breathe, ask God. He's rebuilding beneath the surface. And if you know a woman who's in a tight space, physically or emotionally, share this episode with her. Let her know she's not alone. I'd love for you to leave a review, follow me on Sustainawell, and reach out so we can lock arms together and I can guide and mentor you to a life that's full of transformation and healing. Till next time, ladies, thanks for coming to the well.